Let's begin in Egypt, where calls for mass demonstrations in Egypt by Morsi's opponents have been met with counter-protests by followers of the president and the Muslim Brotherhood, who have camped out since the 28th to support the president. Yasser Hakim covered the pro-Morsi demonstrations and brings us this report.
The Muslim Brotherhood supporters and Islamist parties poured in from all over Egypt to show their solidarity with President Mohamed Morsi against the protests organized by the opposition. Camped out for 3 days already, they chant, sleep, and pray to Allah to protect the president from the opposition.
We are here to show the world that the people want President Morsi to stay. We are the majority and Morsi is the legitimately elected president.
If the opposition gets near the president, we will defend him with all our lives. Morsi is a decent, honest and respectable man who wants good for Egypt.
The opposition have called for the mass protests, citing what they see as the president's failure to implement the principles of the revolution, in addition to the deteriorating situation economically during his first year in office.
The opposition has been inciting violence all year to prevent the president from making progress. They deliberately destroyed the economy through creating chaos. The Egyptians don't believe them. That is why you see millions in the streets.
The 30th of June demonstrations were preceded by a rebel campaign in which organizers claimed they garnered 22 million signatures for ousting the president. The leadership sees it as an illegal move.
The president came through legitimate and free elections. Opposition have the parliamentary elections in a few months and the presidential elections in 3 years to change him. Otherwise, the petitions are illegal and non-constitutional. But they use it because they know they will lose any election.
The Muslim Brotherhood and its allies view the opposition as factions that want to drag Egypt into a civil war.
The Morsi supporters have vowed to remain here until the opposition ends their protests. They will continue their peaceful sit-in unless the opposition resorts to violence. Only then they will interfere to defend the president. This is Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Let's get more now on the situation from Yasser Hakim. He joins us live from Cairo. Yasser, what is the latest on the ground?
Well, there are a lot of demonstrators everywhere now. We can see behind me, I'm in Tahrir Square. It's fully packed. On the other side, at the palace, the presidential palace, the numbers are growing now. The people in the presidential palace have been going late in the afternoon due to the heat. They have started to gather right now in the last hour or so. And we've got the people, the pro-Morsi demonstrators in Rabaa or Nasr City area, where they are also gathering there. So the situation is getting heated everywhere. There are no deaths or signs of violence except a number of skirmishes, but in other cities, not in Cairo, in Alexandria and in Mahalla. And some of the militarized elements have been arrested by police holding guns and rifles, and they were arrested and the weapons were confiscated.
And Yasser, both pro and anti-Morsi supporters are showing no signs of withdrawal, just like you pointed out. So what can we expect from this?
It seems that whoever has the longest stamina is the one who might win. The people in Tahrir and at the presidential palace said they will stay here. There are tents behind me. They are willing to take a long-term pace here in Tahrir and presidential palace, and the same on the other side for the president at Nasr City. So it seems it will be a long week, and we will see who will manage to continue at a long pace. On the other side, you've got the president who said that he will not sit down, he will not bow to these demonstrations. He is the legitimate president, freely elected president, and he intends to stay. And the only way out, as he said, is through negotiations and dialogue, not through demonstrations.
All right, a very, very crowded Tahrir Square there. That's CCTV's Yasser Hakim. Thanks very much, Yasser, for that. Now, a fuel tanker accident has left 31 people dead and over 20 critically injured in the Ugandan capital, Kampala. The fuel spilled all over the tarmac and into the drainage channel, making the entire place susceptible to fire. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria with more details.
The accident reportedly occurred after a car rammed into a fuel tanker at the rear end, spilling fuel on the road before it burst into flames. Emergency services have had to deal with multiple injuries and deaths. This is the scene of the accident in which over 30 people were killed last night. Eyewitnesses say some of the victims tried to douse off the flames by running into that swamp over there. Over 20 motorcycles were burnt and at least 20 people were rushed to a Kampala hospital in critical condition. Eyewitnesses claim some of the dead were cyclists who rushed to the scene to siphon fuel.
With the high price of fuel, when border motorcyclists heard of this accident, many rushed to the scene for fuel, started collecting, and shortly fire caught.
Hospital officials have started releasing bodies to relatives after carrying out autopsies.
Some of them, at least the faces can be seen, and people will be able to identify those ones. Now, the very few which were burnt beyond recognition, we are going to take off samples for DNA tests. Though it might take some bit of time, but that is the direction which we are taking.
Doctors at the National Referral Hospital fear the death toll could rise further. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Kampala.
And let's take a short break coming up.
We give thanks to God for that incredible person, Nelson Mandela.
South Africa's peace icon Desmond Tutu urges people to continue praying for Nelson Mandela. And war on terror, key Al-Shabaab figure flown to Mogadishu.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need to trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back. The feud among Nelson Mandela's relatives over burial sites is heading back to court. His grandson is to respond to a court order relating to the reburial of 3 Mandela children. He says the family fallout has disappointed the ailing statesman and his ancestors. CCTV's Renee Delcam has more.
There was plenty of emotion at this prayer meeting in Qunu. The prayers were for Nelson Mandela and for unity in his family and the nation. But beneath the surface, there's tension. Mandela's grandson and heir, Mandla Mandela, is pitted against 16 other family members. This is the Mandela family graveyard in Qunu, which Mandla Mandela is said to have removed the remains from in 2011. His lawyer has confirmed that he would be responding to a court order, in terms of which he is said to have been ordered to return the remains to the village of Qunu. A court on Friday is believed to have ordered him to return the remains, following an application by the 16 family members. Mandla, though, is planning to respond. He says he is saddened that some family members have gone to court, and that it's contrary to family customs. He said this has disappointed his grandfather and his ancestors. But the elders of Qunu say Mandela's ancestors will only be happy once the children's remains are returned. Renat Al-Kam, CCTV, Kunu.
Meanwhile, South African peace icon Archbishop Desmond Tutu has hailed Mandela as an incredible person who is still uniting South Africans despite being in a hospital bed. The retired Archbishop said Mandela was still a bridge across this sometimes bitterly divided nation that he steered into multi-race democracy. Tutu wished Mandela a quick recovery, adding that he is deeply concerned about Mandela's health. Tutu was speaking at a photo exhibition in Cape Town dedicated to the former president.
We do gather at what is a somber moment in the life of our country. And we all, of whatever persuasion, political, religious affiliation, whatever, we give thanks to God for that incredible person, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. We pray for his comfort and his dignity. We pray that we will be ready to commit him into the hands of our loving God.
Let's now cross over live to Pretoria for more on that. CCTV's Guy Henderson joins us from there. Guy, President Zuma says that Nelson Mandela might be able to go home soon. Are people hopeful that that is actually going to happen?
Well, yeah, that is something that President Jacob Zuma said on Saturday. I phoned the presidential spokesman, Mac Maharaj, about this on Sunday because it is something that has lifted hopes here. As I'm sure you can probably hear in the background, there is some fairly jovial singing. Spirits do seem to be slightly lifted. But Mac Maharaj really, once again, just reminding people to not get carried away by reading too much into every single quote that comes out from the presidency or the family. He reminded us that the last official statement from the presidency still says that Mr. Mandela is critical, even though he is stable. And if you remember back to that first time when it was released by the presidency, announced by the presidency he was critical, well, that held the whole country in a panic. So a sobering reminder there, really, for Mac Maharaj that he does remain critically ill and that it was a hope expressed, but that it's not necessarily going to be a reality anytime soon. Another thing that's causing some concern here is an interview that Mr. Mandela's former wife, Winnie Mandela, has given with a British broadcaster, in which she was strongly critical of a decision by the African National Congress in April to orchestrate and organise a public a visit to see Mr. Mandela, which was video which was then widely circulated around the world, and Mr. Mandela seemingly looking to be barely aware of where he was, frankly. Now, Winnie Mandela said that was very hurtful to the family and that she couldn't think of anything more insensitive. The ANC in just the last few minutes or so have released a response to that in which they've said that the family are in touch with the ANC every day and have never expressed any concerns at all.
And guys, speaking of visiting Nelson Mandela, President Barack Obama wasn't able to visit him, but he did pay his family members a visit. Has he commented further on Nelson Mandela's health?
Yes, this is the final day of his visit to South Africa. He's been down in Cape Town and he's taken himself and his family, his two children and Michelle Obama, to Robben Island. This is the prison where Nelson Mandela and many of his anti-apartheid leaders, colleagues, spent many, many years in prison for their beliefs and for their fight and battle for racial equality. He was actually taken around the prison on Robben Island by Amid Katraba, a man who himself has been a personal friend of Mr. Mandela right back to the 1940s. They have a long history together. He's now in the middle, I think, of a major foreign policy speech, his key foreign policy speech of the trip, which he's doing at the University of Cape Town. Now, it was known before he started this speech that he was going to make Nelson Mandela and the principles he stood for a pillar of this foreign policy speech, that he was going to put it at the heart of it. I've had to pull away from the rest of that speech, but certainly at the beginning he was alluding to the fact that Mr. Mandela was a personal hero of his. He talked about how the ANC struggle was in fact the reason that he originally got into politics back in the 1980s. He said he took part in a disinvestment campaign in America against investment in South Africa as a protest against apartheid. Ironic, though, slightly that he would bring this up in a foreign policy speech, given that foreign policy may be one of the areas that the United States and the ANC and the South African government seem at the moment to have quite a few areas of friction, specifically, of course, Libya and more recently Syria as well. So, yes, there are those things, of course, that bind Mr. Obama and Mr. Mandela, given that both of them as leaders have played a historic role on that journey towards racial equality. But when it comes to foreign policy, of course, the government of South Africa and the ANC and the American government still at odds over many things, and very probably might be with this man as well.
All right, Guy, thanks very much for joining us. CCTV's Guy Henderson, they're live in Pretoria. Now, the top Al-Shabaab chief in Somalia, Sheikh Hassan Tahir Awais, who last week surrendered following infighting between rebel factions within the Al-Shabaab, has been brought to the Somali capital and detained by the government authorities. Tahir was flown from the northern town of Adado, escorted by government security forces. However, it is still unclear if Awais was forcefully flown to Mogadishu or came at his own will. There have been recent reports of Al-Shabaab split and infighting within the rebel group.
Looking at the personality of Hassan Tahir Awais, he is someone who's been very senior in the Islamist movement in Somalia for some time. I think he's someone who can pull some people perhaps to the direction of the government. What is not clear, however, is that if he, Hassan Tahir Awais, made that decision to call people to defect from Al-Shabaab and join the government, so far he's not been able to speak, and so we don't really know what it means for him to join the government. It looks like that he has not joined the government, that he was actually forced his way into Mogadishu now.
Recent coal and gas discoveries in Mozambique has rapidly increased foreign investor interest in the country and highlight Mozambique's potential to develop into a leading natural resource export hub and tourist destination. But ex-rebel Renamo opposition party threatens to disrupt the country's economic growth and could dampen investors' confidence in several areas, as CCTV's correspondent Julie Shah tells us.
Mozambique is on the fast track for development and economic growth. It will take time, but the country's untapped potential is attracting investors from several sectors. The tourism sector is one of the fastest growing industries in Mozambique, and a South African hotel group is not wasting time to invest.
We are now investing $29.5 million into an expansion project. We're putting an extra 110 bedrooms and larger conference facilities. So we strongly believe in Mozambique, and it's definitely the place to be.
Mozambique has emerged as one of the brightest stars in Africa, enjoying growth rates of more than 7%. Development and infrastructure plans are underway, but there are fears that political instability between Frelimo government and ex-rebel Renamo opposition party could disrupt recent economic gains. A crippling thought that scares many Mozambicans.
I want two parties to talk so that we can't get any more war.
But Renamo and its followers believe that the political system is not inclusive enough and that the government is not helping relations.
We are not terrorists, we are Mozambican people, and we want peace. And during 20 years, we showed the international community and also all the Mozambique citizens that we want peace and not war.
Stakeholders face uncertain times if there is no political consensus, and that could rock investors' confidence.
I hope they get together, they talk, they can come to an agreement, because it's in the best interest of all, especially because they need foreign investment, and foreign investment will not come if the country is not peaceful.
Mozambique's rebirth as an attractive tourism and investment destination could lose some momentum due to recent political instability. But the general feeling amongst the population is that peace prevails and that the country continues to attract investment. Julie Shire, CCTV News, in Maputo, Mozambique.